I realized later, Swamiji, that we already had a name placard over there, and no one could have missed you in the front row. Yeah. And the minute you walked in, the energy was palpable, Swamiji. And that's something which the last time we met at the India Today conclave as well, I said it as well. It's amazing the way it's so infectious every time we meet you, Swamiji. But today we want to talk a little bit more because this is BT Mindrush, where we have some of the who's who of India Inc. in the audience. And there's so many lessons in leadership that we can learn from you. Now, Swamiji told me that he travels nearly 200, 250 days a year and is often, giving these sessions and coaching a lot of the top corporates from around the world. So, Swamiji, what's the one top theme that you have figured out in the last year of your travels when you do meet the who's who of the corporate world?
Yeah. First of all, a very good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen. Doesn't look like you're very happy seeing me, guys. A very good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's begin with a little bit of rush at Mindrush. So it's my great pleasure, privilege and honor to be here this afternoon, and I want to sincerely thank Business Today, India Today, for having me over here for this conversation this afternoon. And thank you, Aayush, for that introduction, and thank you for that question. What is it that in the last 1 year I have observed across corporates? And in fact, 1 year could probably be a short time frame, but overall in the modern times, what is it that we are looking at in the corporate world in terms of leadership? Here we have successful leaders being recognized, appreciated, and rewarded for their incredible leadership traits this evening. And in fact, it's a little bit embarrassing. Can you imagine a monk like me sitting here in front of top performing C-level executives who are all going to be rewarded, and I begin the session? Can you imagine how embarrassing that could be? It only says one thing: narratives are changing. I feel over a period of time, to me, there are 4 things that really distinguish a good leader from others. And the first thing is the curiosity to always know and learn. The humility and the vulnerability to say that I don't know. A lot of times the blind spot of having achieved a certain amount of knowledge is to think that I've cracked it and I know it. Innovation, creativity, growth comes from curiosity and the vulnerability and humility to say that, well, this is what I don't know. Growth comes from not this line that I know. Growth comes from I don't know, which means I have the curiosity to learn. You know, engineers are sometimes people who have solutions to problems that don't exist. Any engineers in the house here? Okay, brilliant. There was a very popular mechanical engineer, right? Extremely popular mechanical engineer. And back in the day during World War II, he had gone to fight in the World War II, and his main task was to really repair the engines of the tanks, because he was a mechanical engineer. After the World War II was over, he was from Italy. He got back to Italy and just thought to himself that all these tanks and their engines are still lying at the war site. What if I get those tanks, engines back in Italy and do something about it? He brought those engines back and started a tractor manufacturing company. And it did so extremely well that he had this dream desire to buy a fancy car. How many of you would like to buy a fancy car? Okay, sorry. I'm talking to sea level. How many of you already would like to buy a car better than you have?
A lot more hands have gone up.
A lot more hands up. You know, I always... How many of you saw the movie Diwar? In Diwar, how many of you saw that dialogue between Amitabh Bachchan and Shashi Kapoor, where Amitabh Bachchan said, "Mere paas bangla hai, gaadi hai, naukar hai, chakar hai, tere paas kya hai?" That's senti swag. Mere paas maa hai. Cut to 2023, the dialogue has changed, guys. Mumbai. Amitabh Bachchan, mere paas Lamborghini hai. मेरे पास फरारी है, मेरे पास बेंटली है, मेरे पास रोल्स रॉयस है, तेरे पास क्या है शशि कपूर? मेरे पास पार्किंग स्पेस है. Because in a city like Mumbai, parking space is more valuable than the car, I'm supposing, you know. So this gentleman, this engineer, had this dream to buy a sports car. And back in the day, the only upmarket sports car was Ferrari. He purchased a Ferrari. Day one, he realized that there was a problem with the accelerator, there was a problem with the brakes. He decided to go and speak to the founder and owner of Ferrari Motors, Enzo Ferrari. He said, look, sir, your car is fantastic. There's an issue there. There's a problem there. The issue of knowing it all is it closes our ears and our minds to learn, to know from others, and therefore stunts our growth. He said, there's a problem with your accelerator and brake. If you could just sort that out, boy, there's nobody who's going to smash you out there in the market. And guess what? The typical, stereotypical response of an accomplished business house, thinking I know it all, I've sorted it all, I've put it all in place, I've smashed it all through, which means nobody else can tell me what I should be doing, and there's no scope for knowing more than what I know. He said, you're a mechanical engineer, get lost, man. The guy went home, and he thought to himself, bloody, who the hell is he to tell me this? I'll probably start my own sports car line. And he started his own sports car company. The engineer's name was Mr. Ferruccio Lamborghini. Right. Mr. Ferruccio Lamborghini. If this gentleman would have just been open to listening, the curiosity to learn, to correct, to know, to listen, A, he would have grown. B, he would have probably not created his own competition. And which is why the first thing I feel very crucial is curiosity. The second thing, good leaders, and I'm sure because you are here, you've been rewarded, you have that in you, and there's no end to how much we can refine and hone it. The second aspect is adaptability. Right? So crucial to be adaptable constantly, like earlier it was mentioned, we live in a VUCA world. Everything's volatile, so uncertain, so complex, so ambiguous. I mean, look at how things are changing so rapidly. Language has changed. A boy is asking his mom, when was I downloaded, mom? Thank God he didn't ask when was I uploaded. Sorry. You know, such a rapid change. Generation gap is 20 minutes. Generation gap is 20 minutes because by the time 20 minutes have passed by, the app is updated. The one before was an older generation app. Such a rapidly changing, fast-paced world, you know. And which is precisely why adaptability is so crucial. In the year 2009, there was a smartphone that was smashing it in the market. Absolutely smashing it in the market. Some of the biggest leaders of the United States swore by it, saying we will not ever live our lives without the smartphone. And the one issue with the gentleman who was leading the company was he thought that this is how it will be. He thought that people will only use smartphones for sending emails and calling. Why do we need an internet browser on a phone? Cut to 2014, and as soon as one other company started introducing internet browsers on the phone, in the year 2014, their market share dipped down to 1%. Why? Lack of adaptability. There were 7 words that are the biggest enemy of organizational and leaders. We have always done it this way. We have always done it this way. Markets don't care. Our competition doesn't care. Changing times don't care. The rapidly changing generations don't care. The only person who cares is the person who is so rigid in his or her opinions and beliefs. Therefore, it's very crucial to be very strong in one's values, very firm with one's values, but very flexible with one's belief. But I'll ask Aayush to ask more, because if I keep talking, my God, it's
No,
not
but-
going
but
to be a
that's-
conversation. It seemed like a solo talk. Sorry
No,
about
Swamiji,
that.
no, that's the beauty of it, because everyone was arrested in that moment. But I'm going to build on that just to guide you. Since you spoke about smartphones, see, that's my favorite topic, so I'm not going to segue into that. But you're right, right? Innovation is one piece. Since we're speaking about leadership and lessons in leadership, empathy. And I want to understand from you the correlation between empathy and success, especially in the corporate world, because at the heart of every business is a leader who's a human being. So these emotions and these virtues come into play. Number one, is empathy a lost virtue? Number two, how imperative is it, Swamiji, for a leader to really practice that on a daily basis?
Okay, let me ask all of you some questions, right? How many of you at the moment are going through some personal struggle? You may have to, you could raise your hand. You don't have to raise your hand. It's all right. How many of you experience stress at work? Because when you're a leader, there's more stress than people whom you're leading because you have to deliver. Right? How many of you have ever experienced politics at workplace? Oh, thank you. Some of you are saying, Swami ji, हाथ कैसे उठाएंगे? Politics करने वाला बगल में ही बैठा है. How many of you in your family have somebody struggling with some health issues? Thank you. How many of you here have some issues in dealing with your teenage kids and seeing how to really inspire them to really take that further step and not just be a victim of smartphone addiction? Thank you. Now, as much as all of you as leaders have these issues, that's how much the people whom you lead have these issues as well. If you go through stress, they go through stress. If you go through workplace politics because of whoever's doing it to you, they go through workplace politics at their own level. If you go through the struggles and the anxieties of what's happening at home because of a terminally ill relative, they are going through the same thing as well. If you're going through the challenges of raising children and raising them with the right value systems, they are going through that as well. And it's quite amazing to see that for us, our problems are extremely crucial and important. Could a leader turn a blind eye on the problems that the people whom he leads or she leads has, while they themselves are going through those problems? And which is precisely why I feel empathy is so crucial, because we are not leading humanoids. We are not leading machines. We are not leading robots. We are not leading stones. We are not leading dead matters. We are leading sentient, emotive human beings who have feelings, who feel bad, who feel good, who feel appreciated, valued, who feel completely demotivated, who feel motivated one day and demotivated another day, who are in a great mood one day because things have gone well and in a terrible mood the other day, just as much as we are. And that's precisely why I feel empathy is so crucial. Compassion is so crucial, not just as a human virtue, not just as a human virtue, but even as organizational performance to be boosted. Because when people are treated well, when people are valued, when people are dealt with empathy and compassion, they walk the extra mile by doing more than what is expected of them. They walk the extra mile by doing what is more than what is expected of them. In the year 2007, when the economic global recession happened because of the Lehman Brothers crash, there was a company in the Midwest of America, Barry Waymiller Limited. Overnight, they lost 30% of their standing orders. That meant a loss of $10 million to them. The then CEO, and since it's a CEO gathering here, the then CEO, Bob Chapman, called for a board meeting and asked all the board members, what do we do to recover this loss of 10 million? The obvious answer, layoffs. Layoffs. Bob Chapman spoke to the board and asked them, what if, okay, I'll ask you, what if you're having a financial crisis, would you lay off your wife? Some men are saying maybe. Also, okay, oh, would you lay off your husband? Okay, let me take this controversial side aside. Okay, I'm doing financially not so well. Will I lay off my parents saying, sorry dad, sorry mom, you're having a problem. You see your way you manage because I don't have enough money. Will we lay off our children? No, we won't. Why? Because we consider them family. Empathy comes in when there is a sense of belonging and we say, this is my family. Bob Chapman said, well, we're not going to lay anybody off. He called for a meeting of everybody in the organization, came to the podium and said to his people, the first thing I want to assure you is that we are not sacking anybody out. And he made a statement. He said, wouldn't it be better for all of us collectively to suffer a little bit than some of us to suffer a lot more because of having been taken out of the organization? That's what gave rise to the furlough program. That we will all go on a 8 weeks of unpaid holiday. And if we all go on an 8 weeks of unpaid holiday, we will recover our $10 million. Empathy, compassion, that we don't want you to go through pain. You are the ones who've made us successful. You are the ones who brought us up. I had the strategy, I had the vision, I had the blueprint, but you were sweating it out. You were toiling it out to execute the vision that I provided. So your family. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? This empathy, this sensitivity, this human compassion immediately boosted the morale up. And trust me, hand on my heart, in the modern era, what we need more than strategy is a morale. Where people don't cut corners. Where people feel a sense of belonging and a sense of commitment and dedication to the organization and the vision of the organization. Because when we have all the strategies in place, but we don't have that morale of the people in place, this cutting corners. The morale went up. People in high-ranking positions started talking to people in lower-ranking positions saying, hey, look, I know you can't afford a 8 weeks holiday because you have a financial crunch at home. I'll take your 4 weeks and go on a 12 weeks so you could go only on a 4 weeks holiday. Relationships deepened, bondings deepened. 2007-8, when the whole world was in a soup, Barry Waymiller did not just recover their $10 million of losses. Barry Waymiller made a $10 million profit that year. At a time when everybody was going through trouble. Why? Because people were willing to give their blood, sweat and tears to somebody who cared. Which is why someone beautifully said, I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care. And therefore it's not about leaders who just know. It's leaders who care. People are fed up of leaders who just know. We want leaders who don't just know, but who care. And when leaders care out of sensitivity, compassion, and empathy, it's not just a human virtue. It's an incredible boost to organizational performance and productivity.
Swamiji, I want to pick up on that thought. You said you've touched upon very relevant themes nowadays. You took us back in rewind to 2007. Stormy weather right now in the tech world, in the business world. Jobs are scarce. And some of these tenets might hold us in good stead. You also spoke about sentience and human emotions. I've seen you, and I've seen the Apple Watch, and you're a social media sensation. So you use technology to your advantage, and I appreciate that. But I just want to understand from you, when you look at what's happening all over the world, automation is leading to a loss of more jobs at this point. At least for those, a lot of companies who've been crystal ball gazing and said, hey, listen, these are jobs we won't require. It'll shape up differently, hopefully. But how do you see it? Because you understand the ways of the world. How do you see it? Is technology and all this automation and all the new, embracing all the new, something that causes concern for you? Do you look at it with a sense of trepidation? Or you're confident that the world will adapt, like you said, acclimatize, and then progress?
Yeah. I think let's take it this way. How many of us would, with a hand on our heart, agree that technology and what's happening in the world has added immense value to our lives? immense value, right? Personal lives, business, work, everywhere. Immense value to our lives. How many of us would want to see a world where technology progresses further to such an extent that things become extremely easy, smooth, and a cakewalk for our work, business, and personal lives? Brilliant. How many of us would like a world where, with all of this having said and done and achieved, we lose our jobs? Oh, okay, there are a couple of hands up there. So the next person that would be interviewed would possibly be you, because Aayush is ready to interview to check out how, if I lose my job because of a artificial intelligence humanoid that has come up in the market.
Point noted,
Definitely a
Swami.
point to be taken. We have noted, sir, your hand was up, and he's definitely going to interview on this. The fact of the matter is this. The reality is technology has added value. The reality is, with the brightest minds and with the brightest opportunities and the brightest avenues that have opened up, technology is escalating to the next level. The reality of the matter is also this, that when technology comes up there, as Aayush rightly said, it kind of becomes a threat to human existence, to human potential, to the development of human potential. I was in Singapore 1 year for an event called Masters of the Century. I was one of the keynote speakers, and I came up on stage. I did my bit. I love cracking jokes, cracking people up. There's about 2,000 people in the audience, not a single Indian face. I mean, you don't have a single Indian face. That's when you test your grounds, because when there's Indians, they can immediately connect. I'm an Indian, you can really frequencies match. But there I was looking at people, they enjoyed it. They gave me a standing ovation. And I went backstage, and when I went backstage, everybody started shouting, "Sophia, Sophia, Sophia, Sophia." And I said, these guys got it wrong. Like, and if you want an encore, they should have shouted, "Gaur Gopal, Gaur Gopal." I said, these guys have gotten it wrong. Once I did an event and people did shout because they wanted me to be up on stage again. "Gaur Gopal, Sophia, Sophia." I turned to my secretary, I said, who the heck is this Sophia? So this one guy comes up to me and says, "Would you like to meet Sophia, sir?" I said, oh, I don't mind actually, considering the kind of enthusiasm from the audience. Looks like Sophia must be a someone. And I thought in my mind it was probably Sofia Vergara from Modern Family. So they said, "We'll take you to see her." So I was walking towards the green room where Sophia was, in my mind thinking of any possible reference from Modern Family, so that when I meet Sofia Vergara, I say, "Ma'am, I saw this and it was a real nice night." Good to connect on something that is common. As I came to the green room, there was 2 huge bouncers. Their muscles were rippling out of their coats like real out there. They were standing there. I said, this guy said, "I'd like to see Sophia." He said, "Sorry, Sophia is getting plugged in." I said, "Sophia is getting plugged in?" Seemed like a new slang. Singaporean slang. What's plugged in or zoned in? So I thought plugged in would mean like, speakers like to get plugged into the ambience, the atmosphere, just be in their space. And I was thinking like this, maybe she's doing makeup, maybe she's doing some makeup, using some device to plug in. And soon after, the doors opened, and there were 2 guys who were carrying the first ever humanoid that was made on planet Earth, who's called Sophia. And when they say she's getting plugged in, means literally getting plugged in and getting charged. Sophia came up on stage. I sat in the audience to listen to what Sophia said. And they asked her a very touchy, sensitive question. The funny part is the answer was programmed in Sophia. They asked her, "Do you think artificial intelligence and the technology that has come up today will replace human beings?" The question that Aayush has asked me. I cannot forget what Sophie had answered. In fact, my second book, Energize Your Mind, begins with this story, right? The story of Sophia. And I can't forget what Sophia said. Sophia said, "It needs a human being to create a Sophia. And therefore there's no question ever that a Sophia can replace a human being, because without a human being, a Sophia cannot function. You need an answer to be programmed into a machine. And even with the growth of some of these artificial engines with no names, the day before yesterday, I typed into one of them, and you know what I mean. No names. You know what I mean. I typed in to figure out the details of one of my friends who's a massive businessman. His son, who's now leading the business, to check details. Guess what, guys? He's just about 34 years old. This particular AI engine said that he was dead in 1944. Was dead in 1944. It requires a sentient human being to run technology, to create technology. And that's why Sophia, I remember, said, I'm not here to compete with human beings. I'm here to complement human beings and what human beings do. And what human beings do, to complement what human beings do, it's our human responsibility to, while we use all technology, to while we upgrade to the best that is available, to not do away with the human potential that is behind it.
We hope it remains that way, Swamiji, but you mentioned your book, Energize Your Mind, and now that you've given us the little bit of a trailer, it seems very alluring. There's also an app that you've come up with, Monkify.
Right.
Now that's very interesting.
Yeah.
From your long career, quitting HP in a year, then obviously going to the monastery, you learned the ways of the world, now traveling the world, and now an app. What is Monkify all about?
Yeah. What's Monkify all about? The tagline for Monkify is, be a monk without having to be a monk. Monkify your life without having to be a monk. And when we are talking about monk has very little to do with a hairstyle or with a dressing style. And monkhood has a lot to do with a set of universal values and principles that we follow in life. And therefore, I know CEOs who are like monks because they lead based on those principles. And I know monks who are like CEOs because instead of following these principles, they just lead businesses without empathy. I remember going to San Francisco and speaking at Salesforce. And what was beautiful about speaking at Salesforce was they gave me a tour of the entire building. And on every single floor of their offices at Salesforce, they had a mindfulness zone. More than half of the offices that Salesforce has a mindfulness zone where their people can go, their people can unwind, their people can meditate, their people can practice mindfulness, officially designated zones where they can keep their smartphones away. And guess why? Because Mark Benioff at Salesforce firmly believes that two things are required for the success of a business: thoughtful decision making and innovation. And when it comes to decision making, when the mind is all cluttered up, we decide more based on feelings than on facts. To be able to keep feelings outside of our decisions and base our decisions on objective facts, the mind needs to be uncluttered, and mindfulness and meditation was included there to unclutter the mind for objective decision making. Mark Benioff, not me. Secondly, Mark Benioff also felt that when it comes to innovation, a lot of times we need to have a beginner's mindset. When we know a lot, it's kind of counterintuitive. When we know a lot, how can we have a beginner's mindset? But when we know a lot, Mark Benioff firmly believed and believes that we need a fresh beginner's mindset. And what mindfulness meditation helps, Zen Buddhist term called Shoshin, what it does is it allows you to take a step back and start looking at whatever it is without any judgment, without any conclusions, and just puts you into a space where you're looking at everything from a completely neutral point of view or a neutral perspective. Mark Benioff started these mindfulness zones for decluttering the mind and thoughtful and objective decision making, and for having this unbiased, fresh beginner's mindset, which was required for good innovation in the organization. And according to him and the organization, it has worked magically. Monkeyfy, this app, was started with this in mind. We all, as professionals, as business leaders, as individuals, in our personal lives, at our work, struggle with a lot on a daily basis. And what we need is something that can put us into that space of calm, something that can put us into that space of peace, something that can put us into a space where we can start looking at things where we keep our feelings aside and look more at facts. So Monkeyfy is about this, where we have affirmations, where we have guided meditations. A lot of people find it hard to sleep. We have sleep tales and sleep meditations. We have a lot of podcasts and talks that we're going to very soon launch. And all of that is with this in mind, to help people come into that particular space where mindfulness can help them take charge of their lives.
And we wish you the best, Swamiji, with
Thank
that
you.
particular venture. I just want to get your take on something. So many people who consume your content, especially on social media, there's a lot of millennials like me who grew up with existential angst and existential dilemmas about one particular word, purpose. And then now you have Gen Z who are impatient, restless. They have their own fair set of problems. Do you still think purpose is crucial in terms of determining our paths in our lives, how we perform at the workplace, how we manage all our responsibilities at home? Where does purpose come in, and how important is that serotonin release?
Right. Mark Twain said something very beautiful. He said, there are two most important days in our lives. First is the day when we were born, and second is the day when we find out why. The day we are born is known to us. The day when we find out why is the day when we probably start discovering our purpose. But I remember one of my visits to London, one of my friends took me to just spend an evening at St. Paul's Cathedral. We were walking in central London, walking around. In fact, I think I had a talk at the House of Commons, and I finished that talk. And after that talk, we were walking around and we came to the St. Paul's Cathedral. And I remember meeting the priest there. And the priest there told me an incredible story of the St. Paul's Cathedral when it was being made. The architect there, probably about 1700s, when he was making this cathedral, one day, he was not known to the people who were working at the construction site. One day the architect just walked around and was just moving around to see what was happening. And he saw a bricklayer laying bricks. He asked the bricklayer, "What are you doing?" The man replied, "Well, I'm laying bricks." He moved a little ahead. He saw another bricklayer. He said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm laying bricks because I need to make money for my family." He moved a little further ahead and he saw another third bricklayer. He said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I've heard that this gentleman, this architect, is creating a spectacular cathedral, and I'm trying to lay the brick in such a way that I can help him in making this cathedral extremely beautiful." Now, you really don't change what you do. We don't change what we do. We have our jobs, we have our families, we have our businesses, we lead. We do what we do, and we're going to have to do what we do. It's a shift of mindset that takes us off from the work mode to the purpose mode. Here was one bricklayer who was just doing his work. I'm just doing it for the heck of doing it. Second one is his motivation behind doing it was making money and maintaining a family. Fine, that's a part of the purpose as well. And the third person? Well, there's a spectacular cathedral being created. I'm trying to play my role in a way that I can create an impact and make a difference. It's easy to make a buck. It's hard to make a difference. And at the core of purpose is how do we make a difference in whatever it is that we do and leave a legacy behind of trying and adding value to the world that we live in. And one thing that I always say is, when you're wanting to make a difference to others, ladies and gentlemen, charity begins at home. It's very crucial that we make a difference to our own lives. And I see a lot of leading professionals in the world today. They're burning the candle at both ends in trying to make the ends meet and meeting up with their deadlines. What a word that line is, deadline, right? By the time you cross it, you know what happens. Deadline. And which is why at the core and the helm of purpose is self-care. And I feel to be able to care for our own physical, emotional, mental health needs is so important Today, with so many pressures, such volatility, so many challenges coming our way, self-care is pivotal, because when our oxygen mask is in place, we're going to be able to put the oxygen mask on somebody else's face properly. And therefore, purpose to me is in whatever it is that we are doing, adding value, making a difference to whatever magnitude it could be. And it begins with making a difference to our own lives, which is paying attention to our own physical, emotional, mental health, and spiritual needs.
Swamiji, what an absolute pleasure it's been.
Thank you.
Thank you for gracing us with your presence. I think we've really set the bar high with this session. Guys, a huge round of applause for Swamiji.
Thank you very
He's taking
much.
time out to join us.
Thank you, Aayush.
And we hope to see you very soon.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.